While I lay dying in the ICU, my parents chose Lobster with my brother. This room felt no like home, yet it trapped my life tightly. The white walls of the intensive care unit were as cold as a wasteland, and the harsh fluorescent lights illuminated everything with cruel clarity, everything except the corners of my broken heart. Sounds here were amplified to a torturous degree. The drip of the 4-line ticked like a countdown timer, the hum of the fluorescent bulbs droned monotonously, and the soft footsteps of medical staff cut through my frayed nerves like tiny knives, over and over. Time had lost all meaning here, sliced into fragmented moments by the beeps and green flashes of the monitor. Sometimes a single second stretched on like a century, as I stared at the fluid, counting the trajectory of water molecules. Other times, hours vanished in the blink of an eye, the sky darkening from dawn to dusk while my eyes were closed. The stench of disinfectant mixed with lemon assailed my nostrils, an overwhelming pressure that reminded me constantly. I had long lost control of my life, reduced to a puppet manipulated by machines and medication. I was tangled in wires and catheters. The 4 in my left hand burned with a cold sting, the electrodes on my chest connected to the monitor, and the moist air from the oxygen mask did nothing to ease my labored breathing. Every inhale felt like dragging a lead weight, my chest constricting as if clamped by an invisible hand, cold sweat soaking the pillow beneath my head. Nurse Lynn's fingers on my wrist carried a warm touch. She leaned down, the faint scent of soap on her white coat drifting to my nose, and whispered, "Hold on," in a tone so urgent, as if willpower alone could conquer death. I tried to nod, but could only manage a slow blink in response, faintly making out the genuine concern in her eyes, the only unselfish warmth I felt in that moment. My memories of the fall were fragmented. The blue threads in the gray carpet of my office, before the world spun, I'd been thinking of buying a cup of coffee to reward myself for working overtime for weeks, the shrill wail of the ambulance siren, the ceiling spinning past like a speeding film reel. When I opened my eyes again, I was just a patient number in the ICU, tubes protruding from every part of my body, my dignity stripped away completely. Yet the identity of daughter clung to me like an oxygen mask, a bond etched in blood, impossible to sever even after years of neglect. "Emergency contact?" Lynn asked gently, her voice tentative. My throat was parched and cracked, and I struggled to whisper "Mom" and "Dad," expending all my remaining strength. As the phone rang, beep, 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 my heart raced, my fingers curling into tight, rigid fists. I knew I shouldn't hope, yet I craved that comfort I'd never received, even just a perfunctory word of concern. From the other end came my mother's cheerful laughter, backgrounded by the clink of crystal glasses, melodious restaurant music, and the chatter of my brother and his girlfriend. It sounded like a joyous feast, a sharp contrast to the deathly silence of the hospital room. "Who's calling?" "This is County ICU. Your daughter has internal bleeding, and may not survive the night. We beg you to come at once." Lynn's voice was professionally stern, each word reverberating in the air. My mother's response was casual, even tinged with irritation. "We're at the fanciest restaurant downtown with our son and his girlfriend. We just ordered Australian lobster and truffle steak, and it'll be here any minute." "Is it really that urgent? Can't it wait until we finish dinner?" "She may not live through the night," Lynn emphasized, a hint of shock in her voice. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Through the receiver, I could faintly hear my mother and father murmuring to each other, then the crisp sound of cutlery hitting plates, a sound that shattered my last shred of hope. Finally, my father's voice came, cold and distant as ice, "We understand. We'll pray for her." The call ended abruptly, the busy tone piercing my already shattered heart like an awl. I stared at the blinking green numbers on the monitor, their rhythmic pulse a mockery of order, while my world crumbled around me. The truth lay bare, sharp as a scalpel. I was fighting for my life, covered in tubes, clinging to survival by a thread, while my parents chose an expensive dinner, chose the smile of their precious son, and left me to die alone. Lynn quietly tucked the blanket around me, her eyes filled with pure compassion, the kind of uncomplicated sympathy only a stranger can offer, more heart-wrenching than the coldness of blood relatives. "Should I contact any friends or other relatives?" she asked gently. I shook my head, too exhausted to explain. In this family, love had always been a luxury to be begged for, and I had never been worthy of it, not since the day I was born. Memories flooded in, cold as a winter's tide, my 10th birthday, when I'd bought a small cake with 6 months of saved pocket money, hiding in the kitchen corner to make a wish while my parents took my brother to Disneyland, not even sparing a happy birthday Christmas, when I'd slaved away from dawn till dusk, roasting turkey, making pudding, decorating the Christmas tree until my back ached, while my parents gathered around my brother, admiring his new game console, and never once asking me to sit down and eat. After I started working, when I'd given most of my monthly salary to pay off my parents' reckless credit card bills, while they enjoyed my hard-earned money without a second thought, then turned around and bought my brother a brand new sports car, saying a son needs to save face for his future family. The time I'd had a 104-degree fever and gone to the hospital alone, while they posted photos of their beach vacation with my brother on social media, the day I got a promotion and raise, eager to share the good news, only to be interrupted. Your brother's dating now and needs money. You should help him out, girls don't need to work so hard anyway. My brother was the family's golden child, cherished and coddled, his participation trophy in a baseball game earning him a feast, and expensive gifts, a new haircut putting a smile on my mother's face for days. Even when he got into trouble, my parents would clean up his mess, saying boys will be boys. But me? My report cards were tossed casually into the trash, my part-time jobs were dismissed with girls should be independent, my promotions were met with keep up the good work, and even when I cried from hurt, my parents would scold me for being unreasonable and causing trouble. To them, my brother's existence was a treasure, while mine was merely an obligation, a safety net for their old age, an afterthought to my brother, visible only when I failed to meet their expectations. I'd known since childhood that in such American families, daughters are silent scaffolding, invisible stepping stones, supporting the family, paving the way for their brothers' bright futures, yet never valued, never cherished. Our neighbor's daughter Amy, a top student, had been forced to drop out of school to work and support her brother's college education, her dream of becoming a doctor dismissed by her parents as unrealistic. Girls should just marry well. Another girl, Lena, who'd worked tirelessly to buy a house, only to be pressured by her parents to transfer the deed to her brother for his wedding, with the excuse, a sister should sacrifice for her brother's marriage. This pretense of tradition, this neglect and exploitation, had been passed down through generations, unchallenged. Yet I'd clung to a foolish hope, praying that one day my parents would look past my brother's glow, see my sacrifices and grievances, and realize that I too needed love, needed to be cherished. But that night, all hope died. The beeps of the monitor were like entries in a ledger, debiting my sacrifices and sorrows, crediting their silence and indifference, until the balance was a broken girl fighting for her life alone, her heart in shards. Are you okay? Lynn asked softly. I screamed no in my mind, my throat tight with pain, but the words that escaped my lips were cold and resolute. I want them to never forget this day. In the depths of exhaustion and heartbreak, clarity emerged. I saw my place in their lives clearly. I was nothing more than a tool to be used, and I refused to be that people-pleasing daughter any longer. For hours I hovered between life and death, each breath a sharp pain, my fingers digging into the sheets until my nails drew blood, yet my mind was eerily clear, sharpened by betrayal. Lynn brought me paper and a pen. Write down anything you want to say, just in case. I took the pen, its weight feeling like a ton of lead. I didn't write, "Dear Mom and Dad." Instead, I wrote their full names, each stroke filled with determination, a line drawn in ink, a declaration that this letter would never be softened by sentiment, never bound by blood. The person writing this letter, you may not recognize her anymore. I described every detail of that phone call, my mother's cheerful tone, the clink of crystal glasses, my father's prayer, the endless silence. I recorded the injustices of a lifetime, plain and unvarnished, the 10th birthday cake, the Christmas dinner, the paid bills, the fever no one cared about, the discarded report cards. No embellishments, no accusations, just raw truth, a mirror held up to their indifference. My hand cramped with pain, my handwriting shaky and uneven, but I pressed on, scrawling 4 words at the end in bold, heavy strokes, you never came. Those 4 words were the root of my pain, the reason for my resolve, the final verdict on this false family love. When Lynn came to adjust the machines, she glanced at the letter but didn't ask. She simply handed me a tissue to wipe the tears from my eyes, and nodded before closing the door. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it under my pillow, pressing my palm against it for a moment, as if signing an unbreakable contract. That piece of paper held a boundary they would never cross. The next 7 days were the longest and clearest of my life. Lynn would stay a little longer each time. When the pain kept me awake, she'd dim the lights and hum soft folk songs. When I felt nauseous, she'd squat beside me, patting my back gently and offering water and tissues. No trace of disgust in her actions. Knowing I loved sunflowers, she'd brought a bouquet from her home, placing it on the bedside table and saying, "It's bright. Hopefully it'll lift your spirits." On the 3rd day, she told me my manager had called multiple times, saying my desk was being looked after and my potted ivy was being cared for by a colleague, adding, "Your position will be waiting for you when you're ready." That afternoon, my college friend Claire suddenly appeared at the door, her beige windbreaker disheveled, her eyes red and swollen. She'd clearly been crying the entire way. "Oh my God, what happened to you?" She rushed to my bedside, taking my hand gently as if fearing she'd hurt me. When Nurse Lynn called, I was terrified. I drove 3 hours straight, ran 2 red lights to get here. She stayed with me for 20 minutes, never asking what had happened, just chattering about our old memories, telling me she was taking care of my cat, promising we'd go for our favorite hot pot once I recovered. Before leaving, she pulled a beautifully wrapped box from her bag. "It's your favorite strawberry cake. I went out of my way to buy it, still warm. Eat it when you're feeling up to it." Watching her hurried back as she left, tears streamed down my face. This sincere care from a friend meant more to me than 20 years of parenting from my blood relatives. Mrs. Martha, the retired teacher next door who I'd only exchanged polite greetings with, came too. She carried a cloth bag containing a hardcover copy of Walden, and a jar of homemade honey lemon water. "I heard you're unwell," she said, her voice warm and kind. "This book got me through the hardest days after my husband passed away. I hope it brings you some peace. The lemon water is soothing. You must be feeling terrible right now." She sat in the chair beside my bed, reading passages from the book in a slow, melodious voice. I wished to breathe deeply and enjoy the beauty of life. Closing the book, she looked at me and said, "Child, don't let others' expectations chain you. Don't waste yourself on people who don't deserve it. Live for yourself. Your worth doesn't need to be defined by anyone else." These acts of kindness from strangers were like beams of light, illuminating my dark world and making me realize that blood ties are not the only measure of love. As for my parents, they never showed up, not even a single phone call or text, as if I had never existed. On the 3rd day, I stopped wondering if they'd come. On the 5th day, I abandoned all hope. By the 6th day, I began to feel that never seeing them again might be a kind of liberation, a sense of lightness growing within me like climbing vines, freeing me from suffocation. On the morning of the 7th day, the attending doctor walked into the room with a team of nurses, a relieved smile on his face as he looked at my test results. "Your recovery is going well. All indicators are stable. You can be discharged tomorrow." Hearing the news, I felt no excitement, only a quiet nod. My body was healing, and the invisible wounds were slowly mending, too, nurtured by the care of friends and strangers. I knew that when I left the hospital, I would no longer be the little girl who craved her parents' approval. I would be someone new, someone who lived for herself. The night before discharge, the city's lights filtered through the blinds, casting dappled shadows on the wall. I lay awake, my mind racing with thoughts. After midnight, I heard 2 slow, hesitant sets of footsteps outside my door. They paused as if hesitating to enter. My body tensed. There was no doubt it was my parents. After all these days, they'd finally come, yet they'd chosen the middle of the night, sneaking around like thieves, too cowardly to face me openly. I lay still, keeping my breathing steady and even, pretending to be asleep. I could hear them whispering softly, their voices indistinct, but I could feel their hesitation, their unease, and perhaps a hint of cheap guilt. After a few minutes, they still couldn't bring themselves to open the door, and their footsteps faded away. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. This was exactly what I'd wanted. At dawn, Lynn came to help me with the discharge paperwork. She brought me a set of clean clothes, sent by my manager, a soft beige sweater and a pair of loose jeans, my favorite style, still carrying the faint scent of sunlight. Are you sure you don't want to wait for them? She asked gently as she helped me get dressed. I heard they might come today. I smiled, a smile free of bitterness, only calm acceptance, I'm sure. I didn't need their apologies, didn't need their remorse. I just wanted to say goodbye to the past once and for all, and start a new life. I carefully made the bed, smoothing the sheets and fluffing the pillow as if I'd never lain there. Then I took the folded letter from under my pillow and placed it gently in the center of the mattress, no envelope, no seal, just the unvarnished truth waiting to be read. I hoped that when they found it, they would remember that night clearly, remember the choice they'd made, remember the pain they'd inflicted. With that done, I picked up my small suitcase and followed Lynn out of the room. The sliding glass door opened slowly, and the cool morning air rushed in, fresh with the scent of rain-wet concrete, filling my lungs like freedom. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Outside, my friend Marissa was waiting for me in her red car. Seeing me, she got out immediately, hurrying to my side to take my suitcase and pulling me into a gentle hug. Welcome back. As the car pulled away from the hospital, the building shrinking into a blur in the rearview mirror, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. At the same time, I could vividly picture my parents arriving at the hospital, my mother in her favorite purple dress, wearing high heels, her makeup flawless, my father in a suit and tie, his expression serious, a hint of nervousness in his eyes as he entered the room. When they saw the empty bed, they would pause, stunned. Their gaze would dart around, searching for me, until they spotted the small piece of paper in the center of the mattress. They might have expected my forgiveness, or at the very least my gratitude. After all, in their minds, I had always been the obedient daughter, the one who would forgive them no matter what. But what awaited them was every word I'd written that sleepless night. I could imagine their expressions as they read it, my mother frowning, trying to justify her actions with, "We only did what was best for you," my father falling silent, his face a mix of emotions, yet never truly reflecting on his mistakes. In that moment, as they finished reading, they would understand, this was my farewell, no new address, no open door, just a heavy, eternal silence. They would realize what they had lost, not just a daughter, but someone who had loved them wholeheartedly, who had given them everything. And it would all be their own fault. In the days that followed, I stayed at Marissa's house. Her guest room was simple, yet filled with warmth, clean, soft sheets, a vase of lavender on the bedside table emitting a faint fragrance, a cup of warm black tea with my favorite honey waiting for me every morning when I woke up. When I coughed, she would stay up all night boiling pear soup with rock sugar, sitting beside my bed watching me finish every last drop. When I felt low, she'd drop everything to walk with me by the beach, listening patiently as I poured out all my grievances. These were the kinds of care my parents had never even thought to offer, unconditional, heartfelt, unbound by blood. My phone lit up constantly every day, flooded with calls, texts, and emails from my parents. Their tone shifted from anger, "How could you be so selfish," leaving without a word, to pleading, "Daughter, we know we were wrong. Come back, we'll treat you right, we promise," to desperate excuses, "We were just confused that night. Don't hold it against us," all circling the same unhealed wound. But I never replied, not a single message. I muted my phone, letting their words pile up in my inbox, unread. This was the truest form of revenge, not blocking them, not lashing out with harsh words, but leaving them to pour their hearts out into a void of endless silence, forcing them to taste the bitter fruit they'd planted themselves. I did one more thing. I compiled every penny they'd ever taken from me, attaching bank transfer records, and sent it to my brother with a message to pass on. "I don't expect you to pay this back. But I want you to remember, what you owe me is far more than money." Days turned into weeks, and I settled into a new rhythm. I quit my high-paying but draining job to take up graphic design, something I'd always loved. The salary was lower, but my heart felt full. I signed up for painting classes, spending weekends sketching sunlit parks and blooming flowers, finding peace in the stroke of my brush. Claire, Marissa, and I met regularly, sharing stories of our lives, our laughter growing louder and more genuine with each passing day. I began to understand that family isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by presence, by the people who show up when your room is cold and machines beep, who cook you soup, water your plants, and save you a seat at the table, who stand by you, unwavering, through every storm. These people, bound to me by choice, not blood, loved me far more fiercely than my own relatives ever had. One sunny weekend, I sat in Marissa's backyard with Claire and Mrs. Martha. Claire had brought homemade cookies, Mrs. Martha dragged over a wicker chair to soak up the sun with us, and sunflowers bloomed brightly in the flower pots, their golden petals glowing like the bouquet Lynn had brought me, chasing away the last faint shadow in my heart. We chatted about our lives. Claire had finally mustered the courage to quit her job and start her own business. Marissa shared plans for a trip with her boyfriend. Mrs. Martha laughed as she promised to teach us how to bake her famous apple pie. Amidst the laughter it hit me, this was what a family should feel like: no favoritism, no neglect, no entitled demands, just mutual respect, cherished companionship, and genuine joy for each other's happiness. My phone lit up again, a text from my father, saying my mother had fallen ill from missing me, begging me to come visit. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing but calm, and deleted the message without a second thought. It wasn't that I was heartless, I'd simply learned the truth: real love isn't bound by guilt, and it isn't begged for through weakness. Their longing was nothing but emptiness, the void left by a tool they could no longer use. My mother's illness, if real, was a sickness of her own making, born from selfishness and regret, not love. I never went back. But I sent one final message, this time, a photo to my brother. It showed me standing in the sun, smiling brightly, with Claire and Marissa beside me, sunflowers blooming in the background. The caption was short: "I'm doing well. Wish you all the best." It wasn't an olive branch of reconciliation, it was a final declaration. I had escaped the shadow they'd cast over my life, and I was thriving. They would never be part of my future again. Later, I heard through a distant relative that my parents had finally sold the sports car they'd bought for my brother with my money, using the proceeds to pay off some of their mounting debts. My brother's relationship had fallen apart too, undone by my parents' constant meddling and selfishness. They spent their days sitting in their empty living room, staring at the door of the bedroom I'd once occupied, rereading my letter over and over, their eyes clouded with unshakable regret. Meanwhile, I was building a life filled with love and peace, one I'd chosen for myself. I moved into a larger house, inviting Lynn, Claire, and Marissa to live with me. We decorated it together, fairy lights strung above the fireplace, shelves lined with our favorite books, a garden out back where we planted sunflowers and lavender. At Christmas, we sang carols around the tree, exchanging thoughtful gifts, the fire crackling warmly. On my birthday, they threw me a surprise party, cake covered in candles, my favorite music playing, their faces glowing with joy as I blew them out. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, truly cherished, like I belonged. Occasionally, I'd think back to that night in the ICU, the cold walls, the beeping monitor, my parents' indifference, and the warmth of Lynn's hand on my wrist. Those memories no longer hurt. Instead, they felt like a badge of courage, a reminder of how far I'd come, and how much I'd learned to value the love that truly matters. I realized something profound: the greatest courage in life isn't forgiving those who hurt you. It's walking away from relationships that drain you. The greatest wisdom isn't clinging to love that's never returned. It's finding light in darkness, and warmth in the kindness of strangers. The most precious freedom isn't running away, it's breaking free from others' expectations to live as the person you were always meant to be. Blood may be a bond we're born with, but love is a choice. All those years of being unseen, all the grievances and sacrifices, they didn't break me. They taught me to love myself fiercely, to recognize genuine love when I found it, and to never settle for less than I deserved. The people who truly loved me, Lynn, Claire, Marissa, Mrs. Martha, they wove together the fragments of my broken heart, creating a family more whole, more loving, than the one I'd been born into. They taught me that family is a choice to show up, to care, to stay. Today, I am no longer that little girl begging for her parents' approval. I am no longer the invisible scaffolding holding up someone else's life. I am just me, a strong, independent, joy-filled woman who knows her worth. I am loved, I am cherished, and I am free. My value doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion of me. It never did. The sun shines down on my face, warm and bright. I closed my eyes, breathing in the scent of lavender and freshly baked bread from the kitchen. Life feels sweet, sweeter than any lobster dinner, any expensive gift, any empty promise of love. I know the road ahead may still have challenges, but I am not afraid. I have my chosen family by my side, and I have the courage to keep living for myself. Those who hurt me will fade away with time, their names and faces growing dim. But the years I spent feeling invisible, they didn't destroy me. They transformed me into someone stronger, wiser, and more grateful for the love that lights up my life. This is my story, a story of betrayal, of awakening, of rebirth. A story about love, and about choosing who gets to be your family. To every soul that has ever felt unseen, unvalued, or forgotten, I see you. You are not alone. Have the courage to walk away from what hurts you. Have the faith to believe you deserve better. And remember, your family isn't the one you're born with. It's the one that chooses you back, every single day. The strongest person isn't the one who stays and fights for love that's never returned. It's the one who leaves and builds a life filled with love that is. And in the end, that love, chosen, unconditional, true, is the only love that ever really matters.